Hi, and welcome back to my channel, where I'm going to cover the fighter's Samurai class specialization from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, providing a brief description of the subclass as well as explain and set up the various features gained. If you've ever been fascinated with Japanese sword fighting styles, then this is the class for you. And salesmanship aside, the samurai is the fighter no one wants to go up against due to their ferocious styles in combat. With such overwhelming force, your opponent will either die or yield. Yet, the samurai also gains grace and poise when socially engaged, and can spar just as well in a conversation as they can on the field. And as I've stated before, fighters get to delay their martial archetype selection until they reach level 3, so I'm going to quickly drop the class into place so that we can choose our class specialization and then take a look at what each of the various features we will gain. Alright, and once again, with the bonus proficiency of the samurai feature, it requires you to choose one new skill proficiency or alternatively add a new language of your choice. The skills you get to choose from are history, insight, performance, or persuasion, and the language you could pick is pretty much anything that you want. Now in this particular case, my character already has the history and the persuasion features, so performance and insight might be worth taking. In this case, I'm going to take insight. And also at level 3, your character is going to gain access to the Fighting Spirit feature, which allows you to give your character advantage on attack rolls and a few temporary hit points as a bonus action during combat. The advantage on the attack rolls will remain until the end of your turn you activated the feature on. However, the temporary hit points will stick around until you complete a long rest, or until they get used up during incoming damage. When your character gains access to the extra attack features, that advantage roll will apply to all subsequent attack rolls made during the same attack action. But this feature can only be used a total of 3 times before your character will need to complete a long rest to regain all of their spent uses. So let's go ahead and set this up in our Actions tab. And once again, I'm going to get rid of that feature because it's not going to be applicable. Oops. Let's try that again. There we go. All right, so I'm going to put this into the Samurai group. And we can already see that we have the temporary hit points here. So the only effect that we're really going to have to add here is the advantage roll. So I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new effect here. And set this up as Fighting Spirit. Semicolon ADVATK. It's going to last for 1 round. And it is on yourself and does not actually expire. So we don't need that because it's the round that will do that. And yeah, we want it on round. Technically, however, this should expire after your character goes. So you're going to want to be cognizant of the fact that if you happen to take a reaction a little bit later on, this advantage roll will not apply to that roll. But there are going to be some DMs that will argue differently, and I'm one of those DMs, and here is why. They're using the word turn here for current turn. That, to me, means that your turn is your current turn until you get to the start of your next turn, not round. So if it was the word round here, that to me would state you need to make use of all of your advantage rolls before you've completed your attack action, your movement action, and your bonus actions. It would not therefore apply to a reaction. But because they use the word turn here, I do believe that you will gain advantage rolls on your reaction as well. At least that's the way that I play it. So, as we can see, the effect is actually relatively straightforward to set up. How is this going to work within combat? Well, that is fairly straightforward. Let's say that we're going to attack this vampire. I'm going to make sure that I apply this effect onto my character first. And I should set this up so that we have 3 daily uses. Of course, now that I've done that, I need to take this off. Now, for the entire duration of this round, I'm going to gain access to the advantage on my attack rolls when I attack any creature that happens to be on the field of battle. So when I roll this, I'm going to gain my advantage. Now, if this character had already reached a level where I had an extra attack, that attack obviously hits. Now what I can do is execute it again because that's my extra attack. And again, it's going to hit. Now, I didn't actually target the vampire, so let's do this again. Watch me get a miss this time. Yep. Figures. There we go. So that is the hit. And then I would do my damage as per usual. Now, if my character had the extra attack, I would go ahead, roll again. In this case, it's going to be a miss. So that is how this particular feature works. And later on, when you get to level 20, you would have 3 actual attacks. So let's say the turn has moved on. So now the vampire decides that they want to actually move out of my sphere of influence because I'm doing too much damage to them. They know they're going to invoke an attack of opportunity against them. So I do that. Oops, there should have been something I had done there. I should have actually held down the shift key first and then made the attack. In this case, it's still a hit. Now I can do the damage. Now, if the ape goes through and moves through my sphere of influence on their turn, I am out of my actual attack actions because I've used all of my attack actions during my action round. I also have none remaining for my reaction, so the ape gets away scot-free. In theory, when I get back to the next round where I'm going again, and it does, it's dropped off. Excellent. That means the feature's working the way that we want to. Now, the only thing I forgot to do was add the temporary hit points, but you'll see here that I've added those temporary hit points to the vampire. That's not actually what we want. In this particular case, we want to modify this just slightly and add this to ourself. And there we go, because when you do so, you also gain 5 temporary hit points. This means that your character gains 5 temporary hit points. That means it has to be on your own character. At level 7, your character will gain access to the elegant Courtier feature, and it's a symbol of your character's prowess on the battlefield, and you're now essentially able to move on to a more dangerous battlefield. And what this does is it allows your character to add additional points to any persuasion check your character has to roll, by adding your wisdom modifier to the roll you had to make. Additionally, your character gains proficiency in wisdom-based saving throws, although if your character is already proficient in that, you can choose either intelligence or charisma for your bonus proficiency. So the first thing I'm going to do is deal with the saving throw proficiency, and we are not proficient with the wisdom one. I'm going to first tick that. Now we are proficient. Excellent. The next thing I'm going to do is take a look at what my options are in relation to the persuasion skill here. Now, the wording is very specific here. Whenever you make a charisma persuasion check, you gain a bonus to the check equal to your wisdom's modifier. That means you are still making use of charisma as your actual base value for your skill here. So we're going to want to add a bonus based on the wisdom. In this particular case, this character has a pretty decent wisdom. They have a +3 bonus. That means that I need to also add 3 here, bringing our total bonus value, if you will, up to 8. However, if at any point in time you modify your wisdom when making an ability score increase and you bring this bonus up to a +4, you're going to have to remember to go back and adjust this. Now at level 10, there are a couple of things that happen. The first is that your temporary hit points for your fighting spirit feature increase from 5 to 10. And now we've taken care of that particular increase. Let's take a look at Tireless Spirit. Tireless Spirit gives your character the means to recover a single use of your fighting spirit feature if you have gone into an initiative roll and your character has no uses left. So what does that mean? Well, let's say that we have gone through and we have burned through all of our fighting spirit feature uses. We're now in a combat situation and we just rolled initiative. What we get to do is this. We can switch this back to standard, untick one use of fighting spirit, and then put this back into combat to give us that one extra use that we were able to recover. That is exactly what this Tireless Spirit does and what it means. But it only applies to a combat tracker entry point where you're re-rolling initiative, and I don't mean re-rolling in the sense of you've gone through one round, you're re-rolling initiative for the second round. No, what I mean is you are re-rolling initiative for a brand new combat encounter. Now at level 15, there are also a couple of things that happen. The first is that your total temporary hit point gain increases from 10 to 15. That is the easier change. The second is that you also gain a feature called Rapid Strike, and it provides your character an alternative way to make use of your advantage rolls from the Fighting Spirit feature while attacking a creature. Instead of using the advantage roll that you gain from Fighting Spirit, and to be honest, any spell, feature, or ability that gives you an advantage roll, you can exchange that for an extra attack on a target. This can only be done once per turn, but you can effectively use it every turn you have an advantage roll while attacking, and instead add another single melee or ranged attack during your main attack action. But it has to be a weapon attack. It can't be something like a spell, spell scroll, anything along those lines, although generally a samurai doesn't get a spell. It has to be with a physical weapon, such as a sword, battle axe, bow, crossbow, whatever would be classified as a weapon within Fantasy Grounds or within Dungeons and Dragons. If you recall, the Fighting Spirit feature allows you to apply an advantage roll to all attacks made during an attack action that your character makes. This means that you could theoretically sacrifice one of those advantage attack rolls to push your total number of attacks from 2 up to 3 at this point because of your character's level, if you're only wielding a single weapon. And once your character reaches level 20 and unlocks that last extra attack, it would push them to a total of 4 attacks. Again, only if you're wielding a single weapon. Now, there is no need to add this to our Actions tab. We have no need to track this. We have no need of keeping an idea of how many times we've used it. All we have to remember is that it can be used only once per turn, and there is no way to add a tracker for once per turn use inside of Fantasy Grounds that I am aware of. We're done with Rapid Strike. The last feature your character is going to gain happens at level 18, and it is called Strength Before Death. And what it allows is that if your character is reduced to 0 hit points, and that damage doesn't outright kill your character will not fall unconscious. To do this, your character will have to use a reaction to interrupt the current turn of the attacker that just did the damage to your character. And from that moment on, you gain an extra turn, and this includes movement, full range of attack, and bonus actions, but you won't regain another reaction. However, if your character suffers damage during this turn, your character will have to make death saves while their hit points are still at 0. And your character will fall unconscious at the end of the turn. This feature, however, can only be used once before your character will have to take a long rest to regain any expended uses. Now, because there is a usage tracking requirement here, we need to add this to the Actions tab. Let's move it into the group. And I don't know why unconscious is there twice, so I'm going to delete one of those and set up one daily use. So the way this is going to work is as follows. Let's say it is the vampire's turn here, and I'm going to target the fighter with the vampire. I'm then going to make an attack roll. Now, I just critically hit this character. You can see that right there in the combat tracker, or in the chat log, I should say. I'm now going to do the damage. That's going to render, in a normal situation, my samurai as unconscious. But I'm going to burn my reaction. That means that the unconscious effect goes away. So I'm going to have to remove that as the DM because it wasn't applied by my character. Now, I'm still at 0 hit points. The action token gets moved to here. And that is because I am now able to take control of the situation based on the fact that I'm reacting to it. I'm then going to execute my attacks. Now, this character has the Fighting Spirit feature enabled, so I'm going to effectively add that to my character. In addition to that, at level 18, I believe I still only have, yes, I only have 2 extra attacks. So I'm going to try to outright kill this vampire if I can do so. That is a hit. That's partially resisted, so I'm only able to do half damage to the vampire as a result. Now, I'm going to essentially remove the redundancy here, or the extra advantage capability here, because I'm now going to add an extra effect as a bonus action for, an extra attack, because I'm making use of my Rapid Strike feature here. So, I'm now going to attack twice. I should say 2 more times. So that first one is a miss. Second one is also going to be, oh no, that one hit. So I did do some additional damage. Now, I did not take this vampire out, but in any event, the amount of damage I did to this vampire isn't sufficient enough to take it out. So here is now what happens. I have done everything that I can with one exception. I can move this character if I want to. Doing so is going to invoke an attack of opportunity on this vampire, and I'm going to do that as a showcase as to what happens. So I choose to move my samurai 30 feet away from the vampire. Well, the vampire now gets to make an attack of opportunity, and to gain access to the actions here, I need to do that. I'm going to hold down the shift key, make my attack. That's going to tag this as an attack of opportunity, as we can see within the combat tracker here. Sadly, my character is hit. What that means is that when I do the damage, I now have to roll a death save. Now, once again, I'm not yet unconscious. Instead, what I do is roll a death save. And it looks like it might have already done that for me. No, it automatically tagged that the roll here was done. So technically that shouldn't have done that. I needed to do this. I still failed, but that's kind of the point, is that death saves don't automatically tick off. It means that you have to roll a death save in order to avoid dying. Not that it's going to automatically apply a death failure right away. It should trigger a saving throw as to whether you die or not. Now at this point, with the action token still technically being on the fighter is now done. They've effectively completed what they can do. They're at 0 hit points. There's nothing else that they can do. When you are done your turn and you pass this token, you need to ensure that you apply this unconscious effect to yourself, because now your character is unconscious. And that's how this works. Now, if this vampire attacks your character again, because it is now their turn, they're going to gain advantage rolls on that. And I'm also going to do damage. And we can see that we now have an extra death save that's ticked off here, and that is because we're now into the normal way that death saves are supposed to work. It's not going to trigger a death save. It's going to, quote-unquote, use up one of your death saves. The only time you actually roll for the saving throw of the death save is while your character is still in the reaction phase and using up their turn. Now, the vampire doesn't necessarily get to restart their turn from scratch. In this particular case, I quote-unquote used a second attack that the vampire has, because they have multi-attack. But the ape could have very well done it. So let's say the vampire hasn't moved yet. Well, now they do their movement. Then they pass their turn. That is how this works. Now, when the turn comes around, your character is now forced to make an extra death save. Oh, and look at this. In this case, they actually made a save. So they're not dead yet. But if it keeps going through before someone actually comes through and stabilizes your character, now your character's dead. So you'll want to make sure that you're not the only person in your party, like I've got it set up here. The samurai class is one of the few classes that can really pull together what it means to be on the field of combat, and it gives a character the features to handle themselves as well. This could be classified as a complicated class to play, but I would argue this class is perfect for someone who is just starting out with D&D and really wants to maximize how much damage their character can do, as well as essentially increase the amount of attacks that they think will succeed by gaining the advantage rolls as often as they can. However, this does bring us to the end of this video. I hope you found it useful and informative, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. I wish to thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video. I hope you found it informative and useful to familiarizing yourself with Fantasy Grounds in general, and that you had fun in the process. If you found the video useful and you liked the content of the particular video, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And if you have any questions specific to the topic covered by this particular video, or just have some comments in general, please feel free to post something in the comments section, and I will do my best to respond to any questions that are asked. Additionally, I do release content quite regularly, and it's generally specific to Fantasy Grounds or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons at this time. So if you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to ensure that notification is sent to you when I release a new video.